Today, we're going to dive into the three institutions that were basically the heart, mind, and hands of ancient Jewish civilization. We're talking about the temple, the synagogue, and the Sanhedrin. These three pillars really shaped the nation's identity for centuries, especially right around the time of Jesus. So, how on earth did they all work? Okay, let's start with a bit of a puzzle. Just imagine, for a second, you're a nation, but you don't have a king. And on top of that, you're constantly being ruled by these huge foreign empires, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans. How do you possibly hold on to your culture, your laws, your entire identity? Well, the answer is you have to have incredibly strong internal structures. And for the Jewish people, that strength came from three key institutions. The best way to think about them is as three pillars holding up their entire world. You had the temple as the sacred heart, the synagogue as the collective intellectual mind, and the Sanhedrin as the governing hands. Let's take a closer look at each one.
All right, so we're going to start with the oldest and most sacred pillar of them all, the temple in Jerusalem. Now, this was way more than just a beautiful building. To them, it was considered the literal address of God on earth. It was the very pulse of the nation.
You know, the whole idea for a permanent temple actually started with a pretty simple, almost relatable complaint from King David. He basically said, look, it just feels wrong for me to be living in this fancy palace while the Ark of the Covenant, the very symbol of God's presence, is stuck in a portable tent, the tabernacle. Now, David made the plans, but it was actually his son, Solomon, who got the job of building it done. But the temple's history was anything but peaceful. Solomon's original gorgeous temple, which was built with help from master Phoenician craftsmen, was completely destroyed by the Babylonians. Decades later, a much more modest second temple was built in its place. And then, centuries after that, King Herod the Great started this absolutely spectacular, massive renovation project, turning it into one of the true wonders of the ancient world. Okay, now here's where things get really interesting. A king by the name of Josiah comes along and enacts this totally radical reform. See, before him, people would worship at all sorts of local shrines, but Josiah declared that from now on, all animal sacrifices, every single one, had to happen in one location, the temple in Jerusalem. And with that one move, he dramatically centralized all religious authority and power right under the control of the high priest. But the second temple was so much more than just a house of worship. I mean, get this, it was also a military fortress with these incredibly thick, impenetrable walls. It functioned as a central bank, holding the fortunes of the wealthy, and it was the only place on the entire planet where the high priest could perform the crucial Yom Kippur ritual, the Day of Atonement. This one spot was the financial, military, and spiritual core of the entire nation. And that brings us to our second pillar, the synagogue. So if the temple was the single, centralized heart, the synagogue was the distributed intellectual mind, and you could find one in communities all over the place. What's really telling is that the word itself, synagogue, is actually Greek. Now, that tells us it was probably a much newer institution, one that was likely influenced by the Hellenistic culture spreading across the region. It literally means an assembly, or a place to lead together. And the contrast between the two, it couldn't be more stark. Think about it. There was only one temple in Jerusalem, and it was all about sacrifice and led by priests whose jobs were passed down through their families. But there were countless synagogues in local towns, focused on study and prayer, and led by elected community leaders. These were two totally different ways of living out the faith. The early synagogue was also a surprisingly democratic kind of place. There was no single paid minister or rabbi in charge. Nope, any adult male could just stand up, read from the scriptures, and lead a discussion. This created this really lively spirit of debate and argument, kind of like a Greek academy. And for Jews who were living outside Judea, the synagogue became this absolutely vital social hub for charity and education, and it helped them preserve their identity when they were far away from the temple. Finally, we come to our third pillar, the Sanhedrin. So if the temple was the heart and the synagogue was the mind, then the Sanhedrin was the practical governing hands that managed the day-to-day life of the people. And just like the word synagogue, the name Sanhedrin is also Greek. It means sitting together. But the concept itself was ancient. It was really a continuation of that age-old tradition of having a council of elders govern a town. And that's essentially what they did. They acted as the local court, and they settled everything from property disputes to big religious questions. Now, while the high priest was usually the head of the Sanhedrin, his actual power was kind of a political hot potato. It shifted dramatically depending on who was ruling Judea at the time. Under the Hasmoneans, the high priest was basically a king. But then, under the paranoid King Herod, he was stripped of all his civil power, gutted. Then, when the Romans took over, they gave some of that authority back because they made the high priest their point man for collecting taxes and keeping the peace. And it wasn't like there was just one Sanhedrin. No, you had these smaller local councils of about 23 members handling day-to-day stuff in the towns. But the great Sanhedrin in Jerusalem, that was the big one. It was the supreme court for the entire nation, and it tackled the most critical legal and religious questions of the day. So there you have it. The temple, the synagogue, and the Sanhedrin. 3 pillars, all working together to support this unique and incredibly resilient civilization. But they weren't all equally stable, and this leads us to one final crucial question. What happens to a structure like this when its central, most ancient pillar, the temple, is suddenly and violently knocked down for good?